Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies You Missed. This is episode 46. I'm John.
And I'm Vee.
Vee, how are you today?
I'm doing great and super pumped after watching our movies this week.
Hell yeah. I watched them both in succession, one right after the other, and had a lot of fun watching them both together like that instead of spacing them out like I normally do, because I like to space things out. I don't like to get things over with too quickly in my life. If I know I'm going to enjoy something, I like to drag it out, kind of like a good book. When I start a good book and I get 300 pages in, I've only got 100 pages left, I close it and I don't return to it ever because I don't want the book to end. So it was kind of fun that I watched them both in succession this week.
Wow, I'm exactly the polar opposite. If I have something really, really good, I have to finish it, and I get super addicted, and that's all I focus on. And of course, then I'm really sad that I finished it. I'm like, damn, what else? What am I going to do now? But I don't have the restraint to slow down.
Oh yeah, I oddly enough do. It still happens to me with books. But again, I don't do that with movies. I do like to watch them in one sitting, and we were just discussing earlier how we were going to get through our next episode, which is why I hate running to have to use the restroom while going to the movie theater itself, which is why I don't drink anything while I watch the movies.
Yeah, same for the most part. And speaking of movie theaters, I believe you went and saw at least one movie this week.
I did. I was going to go on Saturday, but I decided to go Friday instead so I could actually do a double feature of both of our picks this week. And I went and saw the Dave Bautista-led new M. Night Shyamalan-directed Knock at the Cabin. And I am going to be completely straight up with everybody that listened that is already likely condemning this movie. This movie's fucking good. And it's one of his better movies in the last 15 fucking years. It was full of nothing but anxiety. It was brutal. And I gave it a round of applause when those credits rolled. I gotta say, I loved it. And M. Night's cameo was fucking fantastic. Great movie. Again, like I said, very anxiety-ridden, great tension building. Batista killed it. Rupert Grint was awesome. If anybody knows who he is, he's Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter movies. And he really takes a 180 from the Ron Weasley character in this movie. I really liked it. I was very glad that I saw it in theaters, and it was worth every penny. So if anybody is curious, get to the theater and check it out.
All right. Well, definitely not a movie I'm interested in, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I didn't think you would be interested. I know we saw the trailer when we saw Avatar Way of Water. I was like, oh, we should check that one out. You're like, nope. Okay, fine. That's what I saw. And V, I don't think you saw anything new this week. That's what we were discussing earlier. So I think it's time maybe we just dive right in. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Hell yeah. So V, why don't you tell everybody what you picked?
Absolutely. I'm very excited to talk about this movie. And this week, for anyone who listened to last episode, they know this week we decided to get back to one of the first genres that we picked in our podcast. In episode 2, we covered this genre as well. It's the female-led ass-kicking action movie.
Yes. Some of my favorites.
Me too. Love this genre. I picked the, I think, trailblazer of this genre. It's a sequel, and actually very different from the original movie that it's based on. It definitely has a very different feel. A big reason is probably because it has a very different writer and director. I am talking about the 1986 Sigourney Weaver-led, James Cameron written and directed Aliens.
Yes.
I love this movie so much.
I do too, and this was only my second time ever watching it.
I can't believe it. Especially because you like this genre.
I honestly can't either. I know, and I love Alien. I've loved Alien since I was a teenager, and Aliens never just came up to watch. I never rented it. I don't know why. And then when I finally did, I was like, what the hell took me so long? And now watching it again, I'm like, why did it take me so long to watch it for the second time? How come I haven't watched this at least 5 or 6 times since the first time? I'm really glad you picked this one because I loved it the first time and I loved it even more this time.
Yes, it's definitely something that needs to be added to your collection, it sounds like.
Absolutely. I almost grabbed Alien in 4K the other day, but I'm going to wait for the full box set to come out in 4K. And I know it's on the way. Even though I know Alien 3 and Resurrection are panned by the masses, I still want all 4 of them because it's kind of fun sitting at home and watching all 4 of them in succession.
No, the last 2 are terrible, and we're not going to talk about them.
Oh, okay. I never said I liked them that much. I just said that I wouldn't mind having all 4 of them. But I understand everybody's hatred for 3 and number 4, definitely.
I actually am a bit of a fan of 3. It's just compared to the first 2, there's there is no comparison. And then 4 is
Very
just
true.
straight trash. But yes, so we're going to talk about Aliens instead. It came out in 1986, and this movie takes place 57 years after the original. Now, the original movie Alien came out in 1979, and it was one of my picks for our October month of horror movies. It was
Hell yeah.
from episode 28, if anybody's interested in going back and hearing about the original. So this sequel takes place, as I said, 57 years after the original. And what has happened is, now this is interesting, we're a little bit caught here because I have to say a little bit of spoilers from Alien in order to talk about the plot of Aliens.
I guess you kind of do. Yeah, watching it last night, and when hilariously Paul Reiser, not hilariously, but I just thought it was hilarious that it was Paul Reiser, was in this movie. He gives some information to Ripley, and I'm just kind of like, oh shit, I think we may have to spoil something at some point while discussing V's pick this week.
This is a first for our show, and if anyone hasn't seen Alien and wants to, you can push pause here and go watch it and then come back. Or
there you go.
Skip forward that 15-second skip forward a couple times. You'll be good.
Yeah.
So it's been 57 years. Ripley has been finally found in an escape pod. And unfortunately, she went through a bunch of space that was pretty barren, and so nobody found her for 57 years. And it's pretty shocking to her. And there's actually a cut scene, and in the special edition, you see she actually had a daughter. And so she's very torn up about the fact that she's been asleep for 57 years.
Oh, wow. So a bit of Interstellar going on here.
Yeah, exactly. And also it kind of ties in later on to how she interacts with a character in this movie.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so she now has to go in front of the company, which is from the original movie, who had owned that spaceship that she was on in Alien, and explain what happened. And there's no real evidence to what had happened in Alien, and it's just her word. And she's in this boardroom and trying to explain herself, and she's being faced with a ton of skepticism and people calling her crazy. And she's like, what the hell? Why are you guys pushing back so much? Why don't you believe me? This thing is real. This thing is going to kill us all. And at the end of the meeting, she finally corners one of the execs, and an investigator is like, what's going on? Why are you guys acting like this? And why don't you just go investigate the planet? And I can prove that I'm telling the truth. And he goes, we don't have to. This planet has been colonized by humans for 20 years.
Oh, that was such a bombshell drop. I completely forgot about that when watching it the second time.
Exactly. And she just has, her face drops. She has this look of horror, and she goes, how many people are on this planet? And he said there's 60 or 70 families that are colonizers out there.
Yeah. I know, that was so nuts.
So in the special edition, you see that she's been demoted because of this situation, which is why she can't get back on a flight crew, and she then has to work in the cargo bay of this big space station outside of the Earth. And so she's working in the cargo bay for a while, and Paul Reiser, as you said, is a member of the company and comes to her and has kind of befriended her a little bit.
Yeah.
And comes to her and says, hey, this planet, LV-426, that had all these colonists on it, we've lost contact. And he said, they're called USCM. They are U.S. Colonial Marines.
Yeah.
And we're sending a couple squads out there to check it out. It's probably just a down transmitter, but if it's not, we really want you to consult on it. And she's really hesitant. She's very terrified from the events of the first movie. She's still very scared. She was just a member of the flight crew originally. And she even says, I'm not a soldier. And he says, you're a consultant only. And she thinks about it, and she still has a lot of trauma, and I think her final decision comes from the fact that she's having all these nightmares and really wants to face that trauma, and so she agrees to go.
Right, and to her it feels like it just happened because she just woke up after 57 fucking years.
Really great point. And so the beginning of this movie is a little bit of setup, but it's very serious, it's very sad. You're really feeling for Sigourney Weaver's character, and her name is Ellen Ripley. And then these Marines get introduced.
Hell yeah.
And this movie becomes a lot funnier than the first one, that's for sure.
Oh, hell yeah, it does. And the first one has some good comedy moments for sure, but this one definitely.
The banter, the one-liners in this movie are absolutely incredible. I mentioned this speech by Al Matthews in our Edge of Tomorrow episode, actually, when I talked about his speech when they all wake up from hypersleep. Man, I love being in the Corps.
All right, sweethearts, what are you waiting for? Breakfast in bed? Another glorious day in the Corps. Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
God, I love that speech so much. And Bill Paxton gets introduced. And this is one of my favorite roles of his. All of his lines are so fantastic. They're so good. And there's another woman who is a total badass in this movie who I love.
Fuck yeah.
Who you will recognize if you ever saw Terminator 2, which is another James Cameron movie. This woman's name is Jeanette Goldstein. She plays Vasquez in this movie. And they all wake up and she immediately starts doing pull-ups and chin-ups. And Bill Paxton goes, "Hey, Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man?"
Hey, Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Oh, Vasquez.
Yeah, I love that. That was so good.
And as a tomboy, I loved this character. I loved how she came back because I was really teasing stuff when I was growing up because I was a tomboy, and her comeback just gave me life when I watched this movie when I was younger. And I just love that character.
She is a badass. I really like her character. I remember watching it the first time, and I was like, oh, yeah, look at that. And then, she's been in a whole bunch of other films, too, of course, but this is definitely one of her more badass roles, definitely.
Absolutely, and she plays John Connor's foster mom in Terminator 2, if anybody's seen that movie.
Yeah.
And so they arrive on the planet and start investigating and doing a search for all of these colonists. Very quickly, we see that there are acid marks, there are barriers, and Ripley immediately knows that aliens have encountered these colonists.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty apparent. Especially when one of them was like acid blood, and you're like, oh, fuck. Like, that, at least they know that part, because a lot of times in movies like this, when they wake up, they're given their briefing. So just like in Alien, they woke up and they didn't really know exactly what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the situation here, too, is they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, they already kind of know what they're getting into based off of the fact that they are colonial Marine. However, they don't really know what the fuck to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, slowly but surely, they start to believe Ellen Ripley and what she's telling them about this alien species. And as they search the facility for these colonists, they finally encounter these aliens, and it's very different from the original Alien because, and I think they did such a great job with the titling of these movies, because Alien is a single alien on Ellen Ripley's ship. Aliens is a whole fucking nest of them.
Yeah, it is. I love the tracking machine that they use, too. It's such a great use of tension and anxiety building in this movie because it has that like pop,
Exactly.
And then when it's kind of like the radioactive meter, like if anybody watched Chernobyl a few years ago, like you hear that, and it's like that's what's all of a sudden cracking in some of these spaceships. Like, they're on us, they're behind us, and then you're like, where the fuck are they? I love that shit so much.
It's just such a jarring noise that it adds to your tension as an audience member, right?
Yeah, and you can see everybody's eyes are just like they're always, and their heads are on a swivel, and the acting of this is so fantastic. I just love that everybody really is just fully in for the ride. Like you can tell, like even the actors behind the scenes, they had to have just been like so revved up all the time to be making this fucking movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I love every character in this movie. They're fully fleshed out. They're not one-dimensional. Very interesting characters. And the rest of the movie is this group of Marines facing off against these aliens. One of the things I absolutely love about this movie is the character growth within it. Because this movie really focuses on Ellen Ripley as a character. And it was purposeful by James Cameron to write the movie focusing on her.
Hell yeah.
The character growth from a very meek, just flight officer from the first movie to growing into this confident badass that she becomes is so fun to watch and so authentic.
I completely agree with that. I loved how this movie really brings her to the forefront even more, and she's got all the knowledge and nobody's listening to her, just like last time.
Yeah, exactly. And the culminating line for Ellen Ripley in terms of her character growth is when she finally faces an alien and says,
"Get away from her, you bitch!"
Oh, hell yeah. That was, I loved I knew that was coming, and I said it, and my wife's like, "You've seen this movie?" I'm like, "Oh, it's only my second time, but I know this part very well."
iconic line.
Yes, it is. And just her delivery is so great.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And another reason why this movie is good is because the mission of this movie and just watching these characters that you like try to survive being complicated by incompetence, being complicated by malicious intent, and some betrayal is really just adds layers to this movie to make it a very good overall movie, not just a good action movie.
Fuck yeah, I agree with that.
And so, as I mentioned, this movie stars Sigourney Weaver. I talked about her in one of our early episodes because she starred in Dave, which was from episode 12.
Yes, she's hung out with us a few times now.
She has, and like I said, I covered Alien in episode 28. She's also in Ghostbusters and the Avatar movies.
Yes, of course.
A couple other movies that she's been in that I didn't really bring up previously. She's also in The Village, speaking of M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, yeah.
She's in Holes, which is a wonderful film. Very sweet.
Holes is funny. Holes makes me laugh.
She's in Copycat, which is the opposite of Holes. It's very, very intense. It's about a serial killer.
Oh, never saw that one.
Oh, she's great in it. She plays being terrified or being stressed or being traumatized really well, and just very authentic portrayal of this woman in Copycat. I think she does a great job, and Holly Hunter's in it too, actually.
No kidding.
Of course, a conversation about Sigourney Weaver can never be complete without mentioning Galaxy Quest.
Never, ever can it be complete.
Michael Biehn is also in this movie. He was in Tombstone from episode 9 and also The Abyss from episode 21.
Hell yeah. I actually didn't know that he was in this movie, so when I saw him, I was like, ha! I know another reason why V chose this movie.
That's right. He's awesome in it. And Bill Paxton, who we adore on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
Who I've met before and spoken with and was a super nice guy. He was, speaking of Tombstone, he was in Tombstone with Michael Biehn. That was filmed actually after this movie, though. We have an opportunity to mention Twister, so that's good.
Yes, Twister.
He was in Apollo 13. He was in Edge of Tomorrow, my pick from episode 33.
Yes, I love him in that movie so much.
Me too. He was in Titanic, one of your all-time favorite movies.
Yes, he was.
He also starred in the show Big Love.
Oh, yeah. I never watched that show.
I watched the first season. He was very good in it. It's just an intense show.
Yeah.
He was in a wonderfully terrible, it's so bad, it's good 90s action movie called Vertical Limit starring Chris O'Donnell.
Oh, my goodness gracious. That was the Everest movie, right?
The climbing movie, yeah. It's so bad.
Yeah. I never saw that one. I really wanted to, though. I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, I want to see Vertical Limit. And I never saw it. I still, to this day, have never seen Vertical Limit.
It's a great, Saturday afternoon, I'm having a burger and a beer kind of movie.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And
sounds good.
He's also in U-571, which is a good movie.
Bill Paxton?
Yeah, he's Matthew McConaughey's commanding officer in the beginning, remember?
I guess I don't remember that. No, yeah. I've only seen I've seen U-571 a few times. I do not remember Bill Paxton in that movie.
Yep.
Wow. Well, cool.
Yeah. And my, I think, tied all-time favorite role of his with this movie is True Lies.
Oh, God. Fuck yeah.
So good at that
so
movie.
Good in True Lies. So awesome. Everybody is awesome in True Lies. Everybody.
I'm so
Carrera, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Excited to do that movie coming up, and I think we'll have to wrestle over who gets to do it.
We might have to. Because
we love that movie.
I think the only reason I should win, and we should take a poll on this with our listeners. The only reason I should win to get to talk about it is because I have worked with Jamie Lee Curtis, and I have heard firsthand stories from the set of True Lies.
I think we both win no matter who gets to pick it, so there's that.
That's true. We both get to discuss the movie, so yeah, we'll figure it out. And
the
right person will win. Right?
Wow,
No, I'm
shots
kidding. I'm
fired.
kidding. No, not at all. That's not what I was saying. I was like, the right person will win the choice, and likely will be V because V picked it first.
No,
Kind
we
of like
can
with
talk
me and
about it.
Ford v Ferrari.
That's
I
fair. That's a
picked that
good
one,
point.
and yeah.
You're
So there we go. There we go.
you.
I think we figured it out.
are
We don't
such
need to
good
take
sport.
a poll now.
You're such a good sport. And Bill Paxton, like I said, has a ton of one-liners in this movie. I loved him so much in it. He continuously apologized to Carrie Henn, who plays Newt, the 12-year-old girl, throughout this film. She is one of the colonists who's a survivor that the Marines and Ripley come upon. Ellen Ripley really takes her under her wing and protects her, and now that cut scene with Ellen Ripley's daughter in the beginning makes more sense. You know, she has a very motherly instinct towards Newt, and it's just such a sweet relationship in this movie.
Yeah, I like that part of the whole movie, really.
Yeah, and so Carrie Henn played Newt, and Bill Paxton continuously apologized to her throughout the filming every time he had to swear in front of her. And I just thought that was so adorable and really telling of Bill Paxton's character as a man.
That's really cool.
He improvised many of his lines, including my all-time favorite when he's really upset and he's like, "Game over, man, game over."
Yeah.
And I love that it's improvised. It made me so happy to learn
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that too. I didn't know that. I thought that was definitely a written line, but that's so awesome that he got to improvise most of his stuff. That's great. I love that.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Paul Reiser's in this movie and does a great job at being the character that he is. For anybody who remembers Paul Reiser, he was in Beverly Hills Cop movies, as well as, most famously, I would say, Mad About You, speaking of Helen Hunt from
That's why I texted
Twister.
you. I was like, Paul Reiser's in this movie? I do not remember him in this movie. And I was like, Paul Reiser? Okay. And he was also in a film that I actually really liked. My wife and I saw it with Mila Kunis and Kate McKinnon, The Spy Who Dumped Me. He is Mila Kunis' father, and he is fucking funny in that movie.
I love that movie, and it's actually on my list.
I know. It was another one. I was like, oh, you chose that one? Fine. I went blindly to see that movie. My wife was like, I like Mila Kunis. Let's go see this movie. I'm like, all right, fine. I think Sam Hewen's in it, too, from Outlander.
Yes, he is.
And she's like, I like this guy. I'm like, all right, well, I like Kate McKinnon and Mila Kunis. And like 10 minutes in, I was laughing my ass off, and I thought the movie was really good. And I even own it now. Like, it's a good movie all around.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it, because it is on the list.
Yeah,
And
it's a good one.
this is another James Cameron movie that I've picked. As I mentioned, The Abyss from episode 21 was my first pick of his. So he has both written and directed the following movies: Terminator 1 and 2,
Yep.
The Abyss, True Lies, Titanic, and Avatar.
Yep.
He also is the writer from Alita, your pick from episode 2, which is funny because that's our ass-kicking female episode.
Exactly. Yes.
And he also created a show with Jessica Alba that was just ahead of its time called Dark Angel. It only lasted a couple seasons, but it was really good.
I never watched Dark Angel at all, but I have seen every one of James Cameron's films.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and you know what? They're all fucking good.
You've also seen Piranha 2? It's his first movie ever. It's his first movie ever.
Really? Before Terminator?
Yep.
Piranha 2? No, I guess I haven't seen all of his movies then.
Oh, okay. Keeping you honest,
I
man.
haven't seen
I'm keeping
one.
you honest.
Yeah, totally fine, because I have seen all of Quentin Tarantino's movies. And, you know, you think about it, like
Well, that's
Christopher
not
Nolan,
hard. It's
Quentin
like 8
Tarantino, James
movies.
Cameron. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, James Cameron, I just counted on my hand. He's got now 7 with this Piranha 2. Christopher Nolan has under 10. I mean, these guys that, you know, come out with these movies every few years because of the insane budgets and these production schedules and yada, 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 they produce quality pictures. And people that are still hating on Cameron, you need to stop. He's not going to stop, and he's always going to be a killer fucking storyteller.
Yeah, I think he's a great storyteller, and I do think he's a really good writer and director. And I've always really enjoyed his films too, so I'm right there with you. And one of the reasons why I was so excited to watch this movie is because I really wanted to know the behind-the-scenes stories about this movie. You know, James Cameron is notorious for being, a bit of a difficult director to work with in terms of his demands and really asking the most out of everyone. So I was really curious to learn some of the trivia behind the scenes of this movie of his as well.
Oh, yeah. I'm very curious.
I can tell you that there are some added scenes that add to not only the scariness factor, but also just the totality of the story and fill in a couple of gaps. The special edition is 17 minutes of extra scenes. As I mentioned...
Really?
Yeah. And as I mentioned, some of it includes Ripley talking about her daughter in the beginning, being demoted by the board when they're investigating her story, and Newt's parents discovering the alien ship on LV-426.
No shit.
It was Newt's parents who discovered them, which is kind of crazy.
Wow. That is pretty sweet.
And so the special edition doesn't change the trajectory or the message or anything substantially in the movie, but it does fill in some small story gaps that I think are really interesting, which is why I do watch the special edition from time to time, but I usually watch the theatrical and I'm not missing anything.
Sure. I wonder if... Well, I definitely watched the theatrical because there was nothing with Newt's parents or anything like that in it. And I did not know that there was a special edition, like with The Abyss, with 17 minutes of extra footage, which then would turn the movie into a 2 hour and 40-minute movie. Because the movie's already 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Exactly.
So I want to fucking watch that. I'm going to own it and watch that special feature. That special edition, most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. If you have the option, get the discs that have both. It's pretty cool. And
yeah, hell yeah.
This was filmed at Pinewood Studios, the same place where Alien was filmed, which is in the UK.
Oh, nice.
But unlike American studios, where crews are hired by the production team, which is how you and I always got hired, right?
Yep.
Pinewood Studios comes with its own crew. And
oh, really?
And they weren't used to working 12 hours a day, which is an average shooting day in the US, if not longer, right?
Very average.
They were used to lots of breaks, taking tea. There was a ton of animosity on this set between the American actors and director and the crew. They were openly hostile to both James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd, who was the producer on this movie. In their eyes, Cameron was a nobody because they hadn't seen The Terminator yet, because it hadn't been released in the UK. They openly mocked Gail Ann Hurd by claiming she only got to be a producer because she was married to Cameron.
Wow.
But they also said they wouldn't take orders from a woman, which is total bullshit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, sit the fuck down.
Right. But in turn, James Cameron, Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, a ton of the actors, and of course the director, James Cameron, despise the crew's lazy, insolent, arrogant behavior. And because they immediately were like, I don't like any of these people. I don't like James Cameron. We want Ridley Scott back. Who's this new guy? And so there was a ton of just clashing on this set. And during the wrap-up, Cameron addressed the crew by saying the one thing that kept him going through it all was the certain knowledge that one day I will drive out of Pinewood and never come back, and that you sorry bastards will still be here.
Hell yeah. Get him, Cameron.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, this is some of the stories I haven't heard of the flip side of James Cameron, trying to make a movie, and these guys are a bunch of pricks.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Very fascinating. Well, I'll bet you they're eating their words now, all these years later.
Yeah.
And good on him. I would have done the same fucking thing. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, me too, for sure. And the cool thing is that Sigourney Weaver had several notes for James Cameron after having read the script. Cameron praised her for never taking issue with the direction he wanted to take, and her notes were all about how she felt about Ripley and how Ripley should respond to the situations she's been put in. And he was happy to accommodate all of them, which, again, is another better story about James Cameron that I was happy to read about.
I've read that Cameron does take that into consideration from any one of his cast members. Ultimately, he makes the final decision. But at the same time, the fact that he's open to that collaboration is what a lot of people throw him under the bus for. And that's one thing that pisses me off. Because it's like, oh no, James Cameron's just a tyrant. All he wants is what he wants. Like, you clearly don't know shit about the guy then.
Well, he also has evolved as a person, as a filmmaker. As a newer filmmaker, it sounds like he was a lot more tyrannical. Right. He was a lot more exacting. He wasn't open to discussion, whereas as he's made more and more movies, it sounds like he's gotten a lot more flexible with things.
That's true, too, yeah.
Yeah, and Sigourney Weaver and James Cameron seemed to have a really good relationship, and it really started because Fox Studios had come to her multiple times asking for a sequel and saying they wanted to write a sequel, and she kept rejecting them because she didn't want her character to be poorly written or, really hurt the legacy of Alien. But she was so impressed by the quality of James Cameron's script specifically and the strong focus on Ripley that she finally agreed to do the sequel, and it was all because of James Cameron. James Cameron is the reason that this sequel was created.
Fucking awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just so great. And I love watching behind the scenes footage of them on the set of the first Avatar. You can tell that they're kids in candy stores again. They're getting to work together again. They get to hang out together again.
All of the sets in this movie are incredible. I love the sets they built. It's so realistic. It feels like you're there. It makes sense what they're doing and where they are. Very, very real. And the alien nest set through that the stairwell and all of those metal pipes and everything, that whole nest set was kept intact after filming. It was later used as the Axis Chemicals set for Batman in 1989.
Oh, that's awesome. Hell yeah.
Awesome. And now that I know that, I'm like, oh yeah, they totally look similar. I could see that now. I get it. So cool to learn that. I was so pumped.
Hell yeah.
And I love when this happens in movies. There's a 15-minute countdown at the end of the film for something very terrible that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
The 15-minute countdown at the end of the film is indeed a real 15 minutes.
Oh, cool. I always do wonder that. I sometimes will do the countdown if you see like 10, 9, and then they cut away, and I'm like, 8, 7. Okay, well, the bomb would have gone off by now. The next cut is 7, 5, 6.
Exactly.
I'm like, nope, bullshit. Nope.
Exactly.
And they do it in Independence Day. They do it in Independence Day when they finally,
the 30-second
it's just like,
countdown. Yep.
yeah. I always counted. I
Me
didn't do it with
too.
this one. I was pretty sucked into the movie, but I'm very glad to hear that was actually done practically. Nice work, Cameron.
It was done practically, yes. Thank you, Cameron, and the editors of this film.
Hell yeah.
Like most films, this was not shot in sequence.
Oh, yeah.
But for adding realism, James Cameron filmed the scene where we first meet the Colonial Marines and, their banter back and forth and getting ready together and being on the ship. He filmed that last, and it was so that the camaraderie between the Marines was more realistic because they'd been shooting together for months. And so they all knew each other and they felt comfortable around each other. And so that camaraderie and the comfort that you see with all of them together in the beginning of the film is a lot more real because they all had gotten to know each other by that point, which I think is really cool.
I really like that. I know that certain directors do that. They spend a month or two shooting, and then they get the beginning of the movie where the intro of the characters happens, and that's really cool to know because, there was so much natural animosity and playfulness that was going around that literally just felt like it was real, and it very clearly was. So that's awesome. I mean, granted, they're reading a script, yes, and a lot of it is improvised by Bill Paxton, but you do get that sense of like this, and like you said, it feels fucking real. That's the cool thing about Alien and Aliens. They do bring you into the world so well with the slow shots, the slow pans, the slow dolly shots, and the way that, you're just taken around certain corners. You get claustrophobic at times. Like I think I might have even caught myself like trying to get out of the way of a wall at one point because the camera's like coming through this hallway, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, this is a fucking movie. I'm sitting on my couch. But it feels real. It's so authentic and so awesome.
Awesome. Well, that's the goal of movies, so that means it's done its job.
Yeah.
It's a huge compliment to this movie.
Definitely.
And lastly, what I want to share is this won Oscars.
Did it?
It did. I was so excited to learn that. It won for Best Sound Effects Editing and Best Visual Effects, both of which are, of course, highly deserved, given this was the 80s.
Hell yeah.
It received 5 other nominations. This movie was nominated for 7 Academy Awards.
Fucking awesome.
I couldn't believe it. Some of them include Best Film Editing, Best Set Decoration, both well-deserved, Best Score by James Horner, who we've spoken about a lot.
Oh, wonderful fucking soundtrack in this movie.
Common James Cameron collaborator, James Horner.
Yeah.
And lastly, Sigourney Weaver's Best Actress Academy Award nomination was the first ever for an actress in a role in an action and sci-fi movie.
She was nominated for this movie?
Hell yeah, she
Fuck
was.
Yeah.
So
that is
awesome.
the fucking best news to hear about something like this. I had no fucking clue. That is so awesome. Hell yeah. Congrats to Sigourney Weaver for that. That is so bitchin'. Who'd she lose to?
That is a great question. She lost to Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God. I've seen that
Gotcha.
movie. It was a great performance as well. The fact that Sigourney Weaver was nominated for a sci-fi action horror movie is so badass.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Fucking, and she was the first one. That is just so fucking, makes the movie so much more badass.
Yes, and just so much more fitting for our theme of female-led ass-kicking movies. So I'm so happy I ended up picking it.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Now, this is 1986. Can you guess the budget for this film?
Ooh, okay. Let's see. Practical effects, 1986, shot in London with a scab crew. Fuck that crew. James Cameron, writer, director, Michael Biehn, Sigourney Weaver, Vasquez, Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton was kind of a thing, kind of a new guy. I'm going to say roughly $65 million.
$18 million.
No! That's it?
I know.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
What the fuck? Oh my god, that's just truly mind-boggling. 18 million. So what, did they spend like 15 million on all the alien costumes and everybody else just got like minimal paychecks? Jesus Christ. That is unreal. 18 million. Those alien costumes are so fucking insane. And I mean, wow, that's shocking. I mean, that's more. Yeah, the sets. That's more shocking, I guess. That's definitely more shocking than the budget for Rush. That blows me away. 18 million. Wow. Well, again, James Cameron had just done Terminator, which could have had the same budget, but maybe a little bit more. I don't know what the budget for Terminator was, but $18 million, and it was shot on 35. So you got to think film stock was. Good God. I want to see the production notes. I want to see the bank notes. I want to see what cost what.
So one thing I did look up was, because this was a sequel, because she's starting to gain some notoriety, how much Sigourney Weaver was paid for this movie, especially because she starred in it. She was only paid $35,000 for the first Alien.
Okay.
She was bumped up to $1 million for Aliens.
Nice.
And also
Sweet.
got back points, which is the best.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
Fuck yeah. That's a lesson to everybody. You
never know what's going to happen. Back points are a great negotiating tactic. It's a bit of a risk, but goddamn, it pays off if it gets right.
It definitely can.
The budget for the Terminator was $6.4 million.
Oh, man.
Which is also tiny, given the visual effects and everything they did.
Wow.
So, $18 million budget for Aliens. In the U.S., it made $85 million.
Yeah, she had a comfortable summer.
Worldwide, it made $131 million.
Ooh, $110 million over the budget of worldwide box office gross. That's spectacular. That's amazing.
Yes, it is. And so you can watch Aliens right now if you have a Starz account, if you subscribe to Starz.
Oh, there you go. I rented it on Apple. I almost bought it because it was $4.99, but those that have been listening know I am at least a physical media type person. I will wait until this comes out on 4K disc to own it instead of just owning it on the streamer, because the contract could run out at some point. But it was definitely worth it. It was a great transfer into HD. The sound was amazing. I cranked my stereo system, and there were definitely moments of sheer dread. And actually, I forgot to send you this, V, but King Louie watched some of this movie with me too, and I will send you a video of him watching Aliens with me.
Well, that's good, because in the beginning of the movie, there is the sweet, sweet cat from Alien.
Yes, kitty.
Jonesy, that's such a cute little orange cat.
Definitely.
And so that's Aliens. I'm really glad you enjoyed watching it the second time around. I'm glad that you were able to watch it in HD, because I know the first time you ever watched it was on VHS a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. Glad Apple TV was able to provide you with a high-quality copy with good sound. Yeah, suck it, Netflix.
Definitely. Yeah, Netflix. Get on it.
God. And yeah, so that's Aliens. I'm so glad to talk about one of my all-time favorite movies. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And now I'm very happy to turn it over to you, my friend, to talk about our next ass-kicking female-led action movie.
Oh, yeah, and I can't wait because this movie's badass. This was actually the second time I watched my pick as well. I watched it for the first time last year. I discussed it in our 2022 wrap-up as a movies that you should not miss. This is the 2022. Dan Trachtenberg directed, Amber Midthunder led Prey, which is the prequel to all of the other Predator films that have come out over the last several years, and Prey is a badass fucking movie. Oh my gosh, it is still badass. I honestly was a little worried that watching it a second time so soon was not going to have the same pizzazz. You know, every now and then that does happen. I don't know why that tends to happen with movies. You watch it and you're like, oh, I'll watch it again. And it's like, you know what? It was better the first time. Did not happen with Top Gun. Didn't happen with Avatar Way of Water. Didn't happen with a lot of movies this last couple of years, but I was worried that it would happen with Prey. I think mainly because, and nothing against Hulu, it's a streamer movie. It was not a theatrical release, and I really, really loved this movie. So for those that don't know what Prey is or what it's about, this film is set in 1719 upon the Great Plains with the Comanche Nation. This film takes place about 300 years before the events of the original Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers. Dylan, you son of a bitch. And I've actually only seen Predator one time. I've never seen Predator a second time. I've never seen Predator 2. I haven't seen Predators. I haven't seen Alien vs. Predator. I haven't seen. So I've only seen Predator, and I've only seen this one. And I loved the original Predator. Getting back into Prey, we meet Amber Midthunder's character named Naru. She is a young woman in this tribe. She has been raised to be one of the female healers of the tribe, and she isn't necessarily all against that, but she kind of wants to get out there and show her tribe that she can be a great warrior and a great hunter like her older brother and like these other men in the tribe. Why not? You know, let's see what she can do. Although her family's very hesitant about it, she ends up deciding to go out on her own after she has seen fire in the sky. She's not sure what this fire in the sky is. And after her having seen this fire in the sky, she goes up to her brother, played by Dakota Beavers. He plays Tabe. He's her older brother. He actually is a few years younger than her in real life, so it's kind of funny to see the age difference there. Yeah. He is the head warrior, head hunter of the tribe.
Tabe, this morning in the sky, I saw a sign. The Thunderbird. I've been practicing. It's time. I'm ready for my katamia.
You really think you're ready? You want to hunt something that's hunting you.
He is telling his sister Naru that she maybe can become this hunter that she wants to be, but she really just kind of needs to stick back in with the tribe and, you know, learn all these healing tactics, all these remedies. The cool thing about this movie is, beyond her being this healer, she wants to get out there and get the kutamaya, which is the rite of passage. She wants to get that kill. She wants to kill the predator that could kill her. So immediately, you just start sitting back, getting comfortable, because what is this woman going to do? She's got this awesome dog with her named Sadi.
Oh my God,
such
I love
a
the dog.
beautiful dog. Beautiful dog, and Dan Trachtenberg actually found that dog 2 months before production started. This dog had no production experience whatsoever. Sadi is actually one of several rare breed of wild dog that followed the humans across the Bering Strait in like 16,000 fucking years ago.
Oh, cool.
So this dog is actually period accurate for the time that this movie is set, which is badass as fuck.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I know, it was really, really badass.
I never knew that. The only thing I read about that dog when the movie came out and I watched it last year was that it was a rescue dog, which made me so happy.
Yes, yeah, rescued literally 2 months before the camera started rolling on this film.
Cute.
So awesome. And the dog, Amber Midthunder said, was a very timid dog to start with, but also a very sweet dog. And the bond that she formed with the dog was fantastic. So Naru is telling her brother that she's seen something in the sky. They've got to go out beyond their territory and hunt this thing down as a part of her kutamaya. He's not really about it. Tabe thinks she is talking about the mountain lion that they are tracking. And so she decides that she's going to go out with Tabe and his friends and help track this animal. A lot of his friends are very skeptical about having a woman around. Her brother really isn't necessarily skeptical, but he's also being the protective older brother and being like, maybe you should stay back, but you know what? Just come on. She's a really good tracker. Let's have her come along. We'll see what happens. You know, let's just give her a shot. Fuck it, whatever.
But he's trying to be cool around his friends too.
Of course, yeah. You don't want to be like the come on guys. You know, you also don't want to be mean to your sister. You know, to a certain age, like there's a point where respect kind of takes over more than, you know, that whole like, oh, you're the younger one, stay back. You know, like I kind of liked that about Tabe, was that he had a little bit of that older brother, like kind of ready to train her into what she needed, but also was willing to let her find it herself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they go out to look for this mountain lion. At one point or another, Naru comes in contact with this mountain lion and very unfortunately falls out of the tree and gets knocked unconscious. She gets woken up. She's back in the village. She's back in her teepee. She doesn't know why she's back. All of a sudden, Tabe comes back. He's killed the mountain lion. He is the great hunter, just like he always was. And now Naru is basically just essentially getting thrown back into learning the remedies of being a healer for the tribe.
This is one of the things that I love about this movie, is that she isn't perfect. She makes some mistakes. Yes. This is very real. And that's another thing I love about Aliens as well, is that Sigourney Weaver, she doesn't have makeup on. Her hair isn't always perfect. I hate that in action movies where the women have like these perfect hair. Like this is a dystopian apocalypse setting and they still have like shaved armpits and the women still have perfect makeup. It's like, this is such bullshit, right? Because they...
Yes. Oh, completely.
Movie studios insist on making these women stay gorgeous through whatever situation they go in. And I love that about Alien. It was so realistic. And I love that about Prey, is that, you know, she's not perfect. She makes mistakes. There's character growth here. She embarrasses herself. And I just love that about this movie.
I completely agree with you, and I'm very thankful for you to have brought that up, because that was not going to be a thing that I actually even thought about.
And yeah, she messes up this mountain lion hunt that she was on and trying to prove herself. And I like that she doesn't get everything right.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, just like Aaliyah said, at first you don't succeed, try again. So she is all about try again. So she takes Sari with her one morning before everybody wakes up, and she books it the fuck out of the tribe and out into the open territory where she thinks this quote-unquote predator is, that she's got to hunt down and get her Kutamaya. And then we are just gifted with not only gorgeous cinematography, an absolutely stellar soundtrack, but just a badass movie after this, because she comes in contact with a grizzly bear at one point, and she is trying to get away from this grizzly bear. She's got her bow and arrow, and of course that fails. And that's another reason, going back to like what you said, things fail in this movie. It doesn't always work out, you know, and that's in other movies too, like the bullet's not going in the chamber, or this, that, and the other. But this is a bow and arrow. She pulls it back, the bow snaps, she can't shoot that shit, and the bear is starting to come up at her. Her dog takes off as a distraction to kind of lead the bear away so that she can get ready to attack the bear again. And then in the midst of all this, that's when something invisible shows up and starts attacking the fucking grizzly bear. And at one point, this grizzly bear, as we all know, is one of the biggest and most insane predators on the planet. And the predator destroys it and bathes in its blood, and that's when we first see the predator in all its magnificent, terrifying glory, even though you can't necessarily see anything yet, because it's just covered in fucking grizzly bear blood. So this is when Naru really realizes that something truly twisted's going on. In between all this, she runs into French settlers that she actually gets caught in one of the traps.
Fuck those guys so
which
hard.
We do... Oh yeah, fuck them big time. But we also get a little bit of a hint that there's something else going on in this territory, because her dog gets stuck by one of those bear traps early on in the movie. And then she gets stuck, and then she wakes up in this camp with all of these French white dudes, and all of a sudden, now there's this predator there, and it's just nothing but badass bloodbath. And Naru manages to escape and reconvene with her brother and his tribe of friends, because they're looking for her to bring her back to the tribe. She finally gets it through her brother's head that there's something out there that they really need to focus on, otherwise they will be destroyed, because this thing is out to get not just them, but everything. And you notice this because early on, a rattlesnake gets destroyed by the predator at one point. And the rattlesnake actually is able to, and this is very interesting, and I was always curious about this the first time I watched it, but rattlesnakes can sense heat. And that's why the rattlesnake knew something was there. and it had that kind of infrared ability,
just like
kind
the
of
Predator.
like the Predator has.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Very cool.
So very cool use of animal tactics and the realistic way of other predators getting their prey.
And I love bringing up these French trappers that you're talking about. I love the underlying kind of subplots and setting pieces of this film. She comes upon this entire plain of slaughtered buffalo because at the time, white settlers and white invaders were killing all the buffalo. And in fact, that was a authorized tactic of the U.S. government in the 1800s, was to kill all the buffalo because that was a main food source for Plains Indians, and it was to harm the Indians. This was an authorized U.S. government military tactic to harm native peoples in this country.
I had no idea about that. I didn't even find any information like that while reading the making of this movie. That's very fucking infuriating.
Yes. White people killed 40 million buffaloes in the United States in a 50-year span.
Wow. Good Lord Almighty. Interestingly enough, I noticed this time watching it when she comes upon the slaughtered buffalo. She finds a cigar. And I was like, cigar? The Predator doesn't fucking smoke. And then I was like, oh shit, I forgot there were those other dudes in this fucking movie. Like, I completely forgot what else went on in this hour and 40 minutes of this movie, because you think you're just going to be watching her run away from the Predator the whole time. And that's not the case. And that's why I think this movie works so much, is because we see her almost demise several times.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, of course, with the mountain lion, she falls, she gets knocked unconscious. The other time she's caught by this bear trap and she's now in this white man camp. And then the other time is she is battling with this fucking Predator every now and then. And the crazy thing about Prey is the Predator is only on screen for a grand total of 6 minutes in an hour and 40 minutes. This
that's
Predator.
Cool.
So awesome. And that's the cool thing, because you watch this movie and you're like, where is it? You're just like, where the fuck is it? And that's another reason why I think this movie works so much, is because every time we're following her, I think we're following her as the Predator. And then, something else happens. You're like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Holy shit. That's literally this entire hour and 40 minutes is you don't know what's going to happen next. And I really, really like that about it, especially because it's a different take on the Predator, set 300 years before the original 1700s. We're with an indigenous tribe, a female lead, Amber Midthunder. Fucking round of applause. Give me more of her. Like I said before, I want to see more. I would love her to be in the next chapter of Alita as like another cyborg, just kicking ass with Alita. I think that would be fucking killer. She hasn't done a whole lot of other projects, but this one is definitely one that stands out, which most definitely is deserving in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. It's a new take on the Predator, which is super cool. And at the same time, so this movie received a lot of pushback from a lot of just, internet incels bullshit, right? About like, oh, a woman couldn't take on the Predator. Like, she's an Indian. She doesn't have any technology. She couldn't kill a Predator that's an alien species. And the general response, which thank God there was one, was, did you not see the original Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Because he sure as shit didn't use any military technology in order to beat that one. And so
exactly.
It's utterly ridiculous by saying that, oh, you couldn't beat it with rudimentary weapons. Is like, did you not see the original movie?
Yeah. Interestingly, you mentioned that because the writer of this movie was Patrick Asen. He's written several TV shows and streaming movies. This is his first big success. And him and Dan Trachtenberg, they wanted the weaponry to be practical for the time. So obviously we have the Comanche, all of their weapons, their spears, their bow and arrows, their tomahawks, their axes, all that shit. Every now and then, beyond the spikes that come out of the Predator's hand, he's got a spear, and he's got that shield, and he's got a couple other weapons that are somewhat period authentic as well, instead of being I've got a laser gun, I'm just going to shoot you. Shit like that. Not that the original Predator had that, and granted, we still have the
laser,
that whole Predator laser thing going down, which
so dope.
The first time it is involved in this movie is so awesome, and that whole sequence is just... I remember when I first watched it, I was screaming in my theater room. And I didn't really scream around this time because my wife was home. It was late at night, but I was just still sitting there clenched like, oh, yeah, fuck, oh, shit, oh. And my wife's like, haven't you seen this? I'm like, yeah, but it's badass. Like, come on, you're not watching this? Like, this shit is so awesome. So, yeah, the Predator's weapons were very similar to being more practical than being science fiction crazy, which I thought was really cool because even though a predator is coming from whatever planet it's coming from with technology far advanced beyond the Comanche tribe, it still put itself in the position of having somewhat of a fair fight, if you will.
Exactly, because that's what it's looking for.
That was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Predator, it's
and
so cool.
And I totally harken back to the original Arnold quote from the original, which is so cool to learn that this creature is only on film for 6 minutes, which is so fucking cool and adds to the tension in this movie, adds the excitement in this movie, because you don't quite see him for a really long time. And then you do finally get to start seeing this predator, and you go back to Arnold's quote in the original saying, "You are one ugly motherfucker."
Yeah.
You're one ugly motherfucker.
Oh yeah, and the predator screams in this movie. The first time he finally comes out of the incognito shit and just like unleashes is pretty fucking scary. Like that is not something that I would ever want to come in contact with in my entire life.
No.
And it's just really fucking creepy. And the mask of the predator actually was really apparently tough to decide to get on, so they ended up going with a creature skull that the predator had originally killed. So yeah, the mask is somewhat of a trophy, like that he's killed like a big predator. Yeah, put it over his face to protect himself from other predators. And then at one point when he does kill that wolf that's trying to get that bunny rabbit, he puts the skull, as like a trophy on like his belt loop,
which is
if you will,
back to the original Predator, because that's what he did as well in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. It's all about the Predator is actually going through a Kutamaya as well. That is the whole point of him visiting Earth, and this is a rite of passage for predators. That's why they start with animals and then graduate up into stronger and stronger prey. This is a rite of passage for him too, and the parallels with that is always been really cool in these movies, I think.
I didn't even think of that at all. It's funny, when I was watching it just last night, I was like, I guess the predator is coming from his planet to be the predator of our planet, kill the next big thing, and that's exactly what Naru is trying to do. So this is literally a neck and neck fight for who is the most badass.
Yeah, and rite of passage.
No spoilers or anything, which we're not going to do, even though we did one earlier today. But yeah, definitely a really cool way to align the planets, if you will.
And yes, this is a great movie. The original is great. And we've talked about this before. Don't watch the sequel, but Alien v Predator is a really badass film, which is kind of perfect given our picks for this week.
Yeah. Maybe I should check that one out over the next couple of days.
Do it.
Yeah, I have to find that one. So the Predator was played by a stuntman, an actor, and athlete named Dane DeLegrio, performed all of his own stunts, did all of his own motion capture with the use of no stunt double. So round of applause for that, because there are some really badass moments in this movie. Even though you're rooting for Naru, there are moments where you're like, holy shit, that was badass. Especially, one of my favorite parts is when the French encounter the Predator, and the Predator just like puts a guy up against a tree and unleashes his shield and decapitates. I just love that moment. I don't know why. It's just brutal, and it's like, oh, like I love that shit.
I love that whole scene. It was so satisfying, and that's the other thing about this movie. There are so many extremely satisfying parts to it where you're just cheering along.
Hell yeah, yes. And speaking of Dan DeLegrio, who performed all his own stunts, he is 6'2" and weighs 240 pounds, and the costume weighed an extra 60 pounds, especially when he was sweating his ass off and shaking sweat off of the latex while he was out in the Great Plains of Calgary, Western Canada. So this was shot way, way up north, and base camp was way, way the fuck far away from where they were shooting. So they had long drives from base camp to set every day and every night, because there's a good amount of night work in this movie.
Yeah. That's true.
We all know that night work is the worst part of the entertainment industry.
And
that's why shooting day for night or night for day is always the way to go, unless you're absolutely in need of exterior shit.
Yes, absolutely. That's very true. And yes, night work is, oh God, you start to feel like you're going crazy or something's wrong with you because your circadian rhythm is so off. It's so nuts. But the location for this movie is, for me, heaven-like. It is gorgeous up there. I love the locations of this movie, and that I think adds to it as well.
I completely agree. Watching it again last night, I took it in a little bit more because I knew, the story. I knew what was going to happen in the end, but just watching the landscapes and some of those panning shots coming up over a ridge behind Amber Midthunder and just seeing just the vast majority of the world that we live in that we have not yet experienced ourselves, but we get to experience it in a movie is just always one of my favorite things. I'm a big Planet Earth 2. I love those BBC documentaries. I could watch those for the rest of my life. I love landscapes and finding out what's out there in the world. So,
and it's funny you mentioned Planet Earth because the American version of Planet Earth is narrated by Sigourney Weaver.
Hey, there it is. Our good friend, Sigourney Weaver. This ended up being the highest rated Predator flick out of all of the Predator movies. It is the highest viewed premiere on Hulu ever to this day, and I know it's not even a full year since it's been out, but that's still saying something because Hulu pumps out a lot of stuff, just like Netflix and Amazon. They're always pumping something out, so congrats to Hulu for that.
Fuck yeah.
That was another reason why I really liked the movie, was not because it was Hulu. I just was like, I've heard good things. I don't think I've actually watched a Hulu-produced movie like this ever, of course, so it was very refreshing for it to actually be fan-fucking-tastic. And this was 35 years after the original Predator. This one went into production. 6 months of production and post-production. It premiered at Comic-Con in July of 2022 and then was released subsequently just a few weeks later on August 5th on Hulu and Disney Plus Star, which apparently is a UK version of Disney Plus because 20th Century Fox was bought by Disney. So, of course, it would be. And I had my soundbar cranked again because I love hearing that blood splatter and that tomahawk hitting that tree. That was another thing early on in the movie. When she's practicing throwing that axe against the tree, I just love that, and hearing it hit and the echo that you would hear if you were out there. It's like that. Does a tree make a noise if nobody's around? It's like, oh, yeah, it probably does.
Yeah, I loved all of the sounds in this movie. I love the wilderness sounds, and because it's not taking place in a city, it's taking place out in nature, these very small sound effects are so prominent, like you said. Very cool sound effects in this movie. The sound editing and mixing did a great job.
Oh, yeah. There is a lot of meticulousness that went down in the post-production. One of them being that there are 2 versions that you can watch of this movie. You can watch the English version that we have watched. You can also watch the Comanche version that is dubbed, and very meticulously, certain points where they speak English, they put Comanche over the mouth, so it looks like they're actually saying it in the proper dialect.
Oh.
Very interesting. I might have to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Hell yeah.
And I really like that in this movie, when they do speak Comanche, you don't get subtitles.
Yes.
I like that. So this film in 2020 was greenlit after 10 Cloverfield Lane came out, which is Dan Trachtenberg's film with John Goodman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I don't know if anybody's seen 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's damn good. I saw it in theaters, and it is a tension builder. Really fucking good movie. John Goodman is awesome in it, and I'm a big Mary Elizabeth Winstead fan, so I was going to go either way. But yeah, check that one out. It has nothing to do with Cloverfield. It's just that's the name of this movie. Cloverfield was the big lizard with T.J. Miller that we mentioned several episodes ago. I still like Cloverfield, the original. I thought that movie, and still is, a badass found footage type of a flick. But yeah, very interestingly enough, Dan Trachtenberg did 10 Cloverfield Lane. He originally posted that this movie got shut down because there were some leaks that went out online about it. Brilliantly, he did that because I guarantee you everybody fucking forgot about it. And then here it is in this badass fucking movie with Amber Midthunder, who's the first female lead in a Predator movie. And it just did nothing but win every fucking person over that saw it. I don't think I've spoken to somebody that thought this movie sucked at all, because it doesn't. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, it's renowned as being a fantastic movie now. I love it.
Hell yes. Now, Amber Midthunder, like I said, she's not been in a whole lot. She was in Legion, which was a TV show based off of the graphic novel based off of the movie. She was in The Ice Road with Liam Neeson. I never saw it. She was in the Roswell, New Mexico reboot. Never saw that. But she was also in Hell or High Water with Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Jeff Bridges, which is a damn good movie. And this film, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, came out August 5th of 2022. No theatrical release. So, V, I'm curious if you might be able to guess the budget of this one, because I couldn't guess yours.
I am going to guess $28 million.
No, it was not $28 million. Would you like me to tell you?
Of course.
This one honestly boggles the mind because I think a lot of it went for the locations and the practicality. I'm not entirely sure where a lot of the budget went, but this budget for Prey was $65 million.
What?
65 million bucks. Yeah.
There's
pretty nuts. And to not have a theatrical release.
You spend $65 million on a streaming movie. How is that possible? How is that allowed?
It happened and it did and it worked and maybe who knows? There might be a sequel coming. I don't know.
There's no big names in it. The director isn't a huge name either. Like, wow. That's why I erred on the side of small.
Sure. Yeah. No, completely understood.
Wow.
Yeah, $65 million budget. Yeah. And the DP, Jeff Cutter, he has DP'd quite a few things. He DP'd Orphan with Vera Farmiga. He DP'd the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street with Jackie Earle Haley. He DP'd 10 Cloverfield Lane with Dan Trachtenberg, so this reunites them again. And he DP'd a whole bunch of music videos back in the early 2000s and late 90s. So, yeah, Prey is a badass fucking movie. Amber Midthunder, I cannot speak highly enough about. Mm-hmm. I want more of her. Dan Trachtenberg can give me another movie and I'll watch it, most definitely. This movie is full of jarring moments. I wouldn't say it's necessarily triggering unless you have a problem with animals being killed. Other than that, it is a badass, predatorial movie, and I love watching a woman kick some fucking ass. And not just to the Predator, but to the Frenchmen as well. She just devours them, and it's so badass. So that is Prey from 2022, released in August, dropped at Comic-Con in July. 6 months from beginning of pre-production to the end of production. $65 million budget. Couldn't ask for anything more out of this movie. And I think it was a great companion piece for V's Choice with Aliens of this week for episode 46.
The only thing I could ask from this movie that it would be more is a theatrical release.
Yeah, I would totally go see it in theaters.
I would rent out a theater just so I could play this movie.
Hell yeah. That's
so
actually
dope.
a good idea. I wonder if you can do that. I know you can rent theaters out, but I wonder if you can be like, hey, so can you like set up your Wi-Fi and get like Prey going over here?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a licensing
I might have to
issue.
inquire. Oh, that's true. That could be the reason why it hasn't happened yet, but you never know.
Cool.
It's worth checking out, I would think.
Do you know what's crazy is that 20th Century Fox bought Hulu a few years ago, and then Disney just acquired 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, I know.
Fox Studios was the studio that produced Alien and Aliens.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, we did 2 20th Century Fox produced.
Super cool.
That's awesome.
And they like women leads in action movies over there. I appreciate it.
Yes, they do.
Awesome.
Yeah, give us some more. Give us some more.
Yes. I'm so glad you picked this movie because it deserves to be seen by so many more people. It is a fantastic film. I love how they portrayed Native peoples in this movie. I thought it was done with a lot of reverence and respect. I like that they cast real Native Americans in this movie, which is great. I've always been very interested in the real history of our country and how things were formed and what happened. And in fact, my great uncle, Thomas E. Males, was an Indian historian and was an artist, an illustrator, and writer, and wrote more than 11 books on Indians, especially the Plains Indians. Yeah, he was a very cool guy, and he was my mom's uncle. She recently bought me one of his books, actually. It's called The Mystic Warriors of the Plains by Thomas E. Males, and is very happy to receive that book. It's now in my living room, and we had his books in our house growing up because it was my mom's uncle, and I think that's probably one of the places where my interest of this subject stems. So I was very, very grateful for this movie to be made.
Hell yeah, that's badass.
Yeah.
Glad I was able to pick it, and we were able to discuss it today.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, would you watch this film with your grandma?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think my grandma would love Prey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There is a ton of realistic, gory violence in it. Definitely not for kids. I would say probably 16-year-old and up could watch this if your kids are used to watching action movies at that point. But it is
I would think that's good.
Great film.
Absolutely. Yes. Agreed with all of that. And V, would you watch Aliens with your grandma?
Do you know what's funny? That Ripley has this kind of curly, short hair style in the movie, and that's the style of hair my grandmother always had, which is kind of funny. Yeah. Her hair really reminded me of my dad's mom. My grandma introduced me to Tremors. I think she totally would have been interested in this movie. She was a retired sheriff's deputy. I bet you anything we watched it together at some point. I was introduced to this movie pretty young because it was the 90s, right? And I had older siblings. So I started watching this movie at a bit younger age, and that's one of the reasons I've been able to see it as many times as I have over the years, and is why it's one of my most watched movies. So yeah, it definitely also has a lot of violence, a lot of terror in it, a lot of peril in it. It's not as gory as your movie. There isn't a lot of blood in this movie, but it's definitely scary. It's definitely intense. It's definitely violent. There is a ton of cussing. I think fuck is said 35 times in my movie, and 18 of them are said by Bill Paxton himself, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think same age range for both of these movies.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I said, I saw Alien the first time when I was 12, and it scared the hell out of me, but I remember renting it and watching it so many times after that. And I don't know why it took me so long to watch Aliens. I really have no idea, but I'm glad that you chose it, and I'm glad that I watched it again, because it is a damn good fucking flick.
Yes. Awesome. So glad to hear that. Well, all right. That concludes our ass-kicking female-led movies this week. We hope, as audience members, you also enjoy this genre. These are two fantastic films to give a try.
I think that everybody would love both of these movies if you haven't seen them. And it's awesome to do them as a double feature, like I did.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you could watch either one first and either one second. It's not going to... Neither of them will dissuade you from watching the other, and that's a cool thing. And what I really enjoyed about watching both of them back to back was I was so riled up after Aliens that I put on Prey, and there's moments when she lets out a war cry, and I'm just like, yeah! Like, I fucking love it. It's so badass.
Absolutely, yes. These are really fun films to get behind and get energized by, that's for sure.
Hell yes.
So for next week, we are definitely taking a turn like we enjoy doing on this podcast. We like offering variety and keeping everything fresh. And so next week, because we're getting close to the Oscars, we are picking two of our favorite kid-friendly Oscar-nominated movies. These are two Best Picture nominees that are kid-friendly. And I think both of these movies are just great lighter fare for next week's episode.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely lighter fare, but very enjoyable lighter fare.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to share with everyone what you picked for next week?
Yes, I would love to fill everybody in. I am going with one of my favorite films. I've loved this movie since I was a child. I have watched this movie countless times as an adult. I can't help but love it. It is the Robert Stevenson directed, Bill Walsh, Dan DeGrady written, starring Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. This is Mary Poppins, ladies and gentlemen.
That's so funny. I saw it a bunch of times when I was a kid. I don't think I've seen this movie in more than 20 years.
Oh my gosh, I watch this movie like 3 times a year. And I'm not exaggerating. This is one of those movies that not only is it an awesome kids movie, it's a fantastic fucking acid trip. And you can find this acid trip on Disney Plus. I will be watching it on Disney Plus since I actually do not have a DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K physical copy of this. I do, however, have a VHS copy of it, and the VHS copy at the end has like an hour of behind the scenes with the Sherman Brothers making the music and all that kind of stuff. Just amazing. I love this movie very much, so I can't wait to watch it and discuss it for next week as we get raring to go for the Oscars. And V, what are you going to choose?
I'm choosing one of my all-time favorites, definitely one of my all-time favorite Best Picture nominees as well. I picked the 1982 Steven Spielberg directed, Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore starring E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
All right.
I love that movie.
So good.
Unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere, but you can rent it from Amazon, Apple, most streaming services for $3.99 if you don't own it on DVD.
Sounds good. I have a VHS copy. I don't have it on DVD or Blu-ray, so I will likely rent it. Unless between now and the next few days I can find it at Best Buy or Target, I will take it home that way for sure.
So those are our movies for next week. Thank you all, everyone, for tuning in to episode 46. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It helps us so much, and we do appreciate it. And if you write us a review, we will send you a sticker. And you can follow us on social media at MoviesYouMissPod. And to get in contact with us via email, it's moviesYouMissPod@gmail.com.
Hell yeah, do hit us up. We do love the interaction. And speaking of interaction, just the other night, I posted something on our Instagram stories. It had to do with one of my favorite horror movies, which is The Descent, if anybody's seen that one. Great horror movie. I watched it last October. Still scares the living hell out of me. Shared this meme on our Instagram account. I tagged Neil Marshall, the director of The Descent. Not only did he see the story, he shared it to his Instagram page as well. I wrote a message to him to see if maybe one day we could get him on the podcast, and I know he has seen the message. So I'm going to do what I can from here on out to try and get him on maybe this October as we discuss horror movies later on this year.
That'd be dope.
So thank you. Yeah, so thank you, sir, for dropping by, and maybe we'll chat in the future. Here's hoping.
Absolutely.
And as always, here at Movies You Missed, we like to sign off with film is a form of art, and in art all opinions are valid, except if you think
a female-led action movie can't kick as much or more ass than any male-led action movie.
And the standing ovation has begun, and it will be longer than what Triangle of Sadness received a Palme d'Or because I didn't deserve the Palme d'Or.
Exactly.
That's what I got to say about that. So next week, we look forward to bringing you guys those two picks, and we are getting closer to Oscar season, which is also exciting here for both of us, since we'll be watching it together. So, as we always do, like to sign off after our sign-off. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.